girls! You might notice that I'm somewhere familiar today for our lesson, and we are starting a really new exciting unit on figurative language and poetry. And I love, 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 love poetry because it's a way that you can express yourself and how you're feeling, and there aren't really a lot of rules to poetry. Poems can be silly, they can be sad, they can be happy. We see a lot of poems in the Bible too, when David is expressing how he feels to God. So poetry is a way that we can express ourselves or tell a story, and there's a lot of different types of poetry that we're going to explore. But within poetry, there is something else called figurative language. And figurative language can be used in your picture books or in a chapter book, but we see a lot of figurative language in poetry, so it's the perfect way to practice. Perfect way to practice. Perfect way to practice. Did you hear that sound? Both times I was making the p, p sound. Well, it just so happens that alliteration is a series of words that start with the same sound. So for example, 6 smiley starfish. In that phrase, 6 smiley starfish, we have the s sound repeated, and that's alliteration. That's something that poets use or authors will use to make their writing a little more interesting. So, one example that you might have heard before, which is kind of a tongue twister, is Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Whew, now you try to say it. I'm waiting. Now, the repeated sound in Sally sells seashells by the seashore is the sh sound. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. So we have the sound repeated in the beginning of a lot of syllables. So if we look at this other example down here, Miss Marshall made a mess of making marshmallow macaroons. Well, that sounds delicious. Why don't you go ahead and try to say it? Miss Marshall made a mess of making marshmallow macaroons. What sound is repeated in this sentence? Right, the sound. Miss Marshall made a mess of making marshmallow macaroons. So as you can see, the beginning of each word of the words I underlined had the sound. Now notice not every word in the sentence had to have the sound, like Miss Marshall made a and of. I didn't have that. Not every word had to be starting with the sound, but in order to make it interesting, I added in some words that had in the beginning. Now you can use alliteration in a smaller phrase, like I could say, have you ever seen such a boastful, beautiful baby, right? Boastful, beautiful baby. I used the b sound in that phrase and I repeated it. So remember, alliteration is a series of words that start with the same sound, like 6 smiley starfish. So your job today is to think of alliteration that you could use, or a sentence that you could use alliteration in, and use your own name, okay? And then see if you can write a poem about something around your room or around your house and use alliteration in your poem. Now when you're writing a poem, we're still learning about what a poem is and the different things that make a poem unique. So just do your best and try it out. We're gonna try to write a poem every day. I'm gonna try to write a poem every day, and we're gonna see how we grow and get even better as we go throughout this unit. So you're going to write a phrase with your name, and you're going to use alliteration when you write that phrase. You're going to look around the room, make up a little poem about something around your room, try to use alliteration. And the last thing you're gonna do is, I have a poem that I've posted for you. It's called Maggie and Molly and May by E.E. Cummings, and you're going to underline and find the alliteration in that poem. Sound good? Can't wait to see what you come up with.